everyone, welcome back to the Data Prof channel. If you're new here, be sure to hit that subscribe button for more coding tutorials. In our last lesson, we delved into Python's built-in functions. Among other things, we explored the difference between a string or text and a variable. Do you remember its distinction? It's crucial, and today we're building on that foundation. Today we'll expand on this concept, diving deep into the diverse world of Python data types. By the end of this lesson, you'll have a firm grasp on when and why to use each type. Let's kick things off with the basics. To start with the integers type, we've actually seen this in the last recording. So for integers, they're basically just numbers, how we have known them. So for example here, a equals 5 and b equals -3. Negative numbers are still considered integers. To determine again and verify its type, what we can do based on the function that we've learned last time is to print its type. And of course, we can verify that even negative numbers are considered as integers. So they represent whole numbers without a decimal point. That's going to be very important. Moving on, we have floating point numbers, or simply just float. So for float, let's say for example we assign 5.7 and y to be equal to -3.2. In this particular case, to verify, we can print the type and see that they're floats. X and y here are floats because they have decimal points. Note that integers and floats are both numeric data types. However, what distinguishes one from the other is the presence of decimal points. The third type is something that we've already encountered in the last recording. It's actually strings, or common language for people, it's just called text. So for example here, name, and we have here the data prof, and we also have a greeting. So we've already seen this in the last cast. Of course, if you print type, you have your string. Notice that it doesn't matter whether you used a single quote or double quotes. It just matters that you're consistent. They represent textual data. The fourth type that we will be discussing is actually Boolean, or sometimes just referred to as bool. So, for example, if you have this variable is true, to be equals to true, or is false, to be equal to false, and you print its type, you see that the class that is being referred to here is the Boolean or the bool type. Here's where it might get tricky again. Note that here, true and false, for them to become a Boolean variable, they must not have any quotation marks, whether single or double. Because if you enclose them in single or double quotes, they become a string. Now, Booleans only have two values, true or false. They are used primarily for conditions and logic, and will have some recording for that as well. The fifth data type that we want to discuss is the list. So as opposed to using the parentheses, list makes use of the square bracket. So for example, we have here fruits, and what are example of fruits? We have apple, banana, and cherry. Okay. We can also have numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4. And if you print the type of the variable fruits, you'll see that it's a list. So lists are ordered collections of items which can be of any type. Okay, it doesn't need to be just one type. For example, in this case for fruits, all of the elements in the list are string, but for a list you can have multiple data types enclosed as elements. So for example, in this case, we can have a mixed list. We can have 42, let's say Python, or the value of pi, maybe even Boolean, or maybe even another list. So let's say, for example, here we have A, and maybe we have here nested, and maybe list, and we haven't learned this data type yet, but let's include this, which we will call a dictionary. So name, and if we verify the type of mixed list, it is still a list. See, even though we have a lot of different data types inside the list, because the outer container is a list, it is actually going to be identified as a list. And list is actually one of my favorite containers. It can contain multiple items, and in the course of me teaching you different real world use case, we'll be using list a lot. Now, one thing to note here is that the elements of the lists are separated by a comma. It's very important that the elements, in order for you to tell Python that they're a different element already, that a comma is placed between those two items. So for example, for this case, apple, banana, and cherry, apple and banana separated by the comma, and therefore there are 3 elements. To verify that, we can actually type len and see what the length of fruits variable is going to be. It's 3 because there are 3 elements, apple, banana, and cherry, all separated by a comma. Same with mixed list. The next data type that we're going to discuss is actually the tuples. Unlike lists, tuples are immutable and they are not enclosed using a square bracket, but simply just a parenthesis. Kind of like how we use it in function, but in this particular case, there's no name behind it because the name for the function represents the function name. Here, the parenthesis is really just used as the container. So for example, for this case, we have 125.9, for example, and then maybe 14.89. And if you print the type here, tuple. Note that it's very important for us to emphasize tuples are immutable, meaning that their values can't be changed after you create them or initialize them. In this particular case, we have initialized them to be these values, and therefore they can no longer be changed over the course of, let's say, maybe even a loop, and or whatever that we do in the code or in our notebook. The 7th data type that I'd like to discuss is actually the dictionary. So for dictionaries, or the dict type, let's use an example that is closer to home. So let's say, for example, we have here province, capital. Okay. Take note that your variables cannot contain any spaces. Okay, so for example, for this one, you have to have an underscore because they cannot have any space for the variable name. Now, in this particular case, for the dictionary, the one that encloses them is actually the curly brackets. So we have here. So let's say, for example, Luzon, and we have here Manila, comma, again, just like the list, to denote that it's another entry. Visayas, and here Cebu City. Okay, and last but not the least, Mindanao. For this one, we have Davao City. Now, if you print the type for the province capital, we have. Now, it's important to understand the syntax for the dictionaries. Dictionaries are key value pairs. Here, we map the major islands in the Philippines to their notable cities. For example, for Luzon, the notable city is Manila. Now, key value pair for this particular case, Luzon is the key and the value associated to that is actually Manila. So for example, if we want to get the value associated to the key Luzon, we use this syntax. Okay, it's kind of like similar to subscription, and you see here that the value being fetched is Manila because the value associated to the key Luzon is Manila. If you try it for, let's say, Visayas, you'll have here Cebu City because the value associated to Visayas is Cebu City. Now, last but not the least is actually what we call sets. So, sets are unordered collections of unique elements. Okay, that's actually very important. They are unique elements. So, for example, for this particular case, we have unique numbers. Okay, and they are as well enclosed by a curly bracket. But see here, even though dictionaries are enclosed by curly brackets, without the colon, then the particular variable becomes just a set. Remember, they are unique. So for example, in this case, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So if you print the type of unique numbers, you'll get a set. There you have it, folks. We journeyed through the diverse landscape of Python data types today, building on the foundational concept we previously covered. Well, it's exciting to see how everything in Python interconnects, isn't it? Remember, understanding data types is like knowing your building blocks. The more familiar you are with them, the grander the structures you can build. Now, if today's lesson helped you shed some light on this topic, please hit that like button and drop your thoughts in the comments below. I love hearing from all of you. Keep experimenting, stay passionate, and I'll see you in the next one. Happy coding!